Another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again are my co-hosts, Richie O'Leary, Alec Crouthamel, and Craig Epstein. Guys, this is a basketball-centric episode. So we're going to talk Rutgers men's basketball, give our season predictions, talk about this team, kind of go give you a 360-degree view of this program ahead of the 2025-2026 hoops season. But before we get into any of that, this podcast is once again presented to you by FanDuel. If you want to bet on Rutgers hoops for this season, there's only two futures bets right now. National champion or Big Ten champion. They are both plus 200, or sorry, not plus 200, 200 to 1.
Whoa.
I would not advocate on betting on either of those, but I know some people like to have a little, long shot bet throughout the season. If you want to have a dollar on it, I mean, have fun. It's a donation at that point. But additionally, Rutgers football is now a 1.5 underdog at home for this Maryland game. They opened at a 1.5 favorite, so that flip happened this morning.
So things are going great, is what you're saying.
So things are going great, but let's keep this to basketball. We want to thank our sponsor FanDuel once again, but let's talk first about the changes in the roster heading into this upcoming season. A lot of new faces. We covered them with individual episodes in recruiting, but I want to give everyone a refresher. So the new faces on the team: Tariq Francis. He is a transfer guard from NJIT. We have Lino, who is a true freshman out of California. Kaden Powers, a true freshman out of Washington State. We have Darren Buchanan Jr., who is a transfer from George Washington, who started his career at Virginia Tech. We have Chris Nwuli, who is a true freshman out of Dynamic Prep in Nevada. We have Harun Zrno, who is a true freshman out of Bosnia. We have Gevonte Ware, who is a true freshman center out of, I think he played his high school ball in North Carolina, but I think he's from New York. We have Dorian Jones, the true freshman out of Ohio. We have Dennis Badalau, who is a true freshman out of Romania, who's a wing. And then we have the center true freshman, Baye, who came to us from Kansas State, but previously was at Arkansas. Okay, those are the new players on the team. Let's go, I guess, talk a little bit about each one. Richie, tell us a little bit about Tariq Francis, the transfer guard from NJIT.
Tariq Francis was one of the top scorers in the, I think it's American East. Alec, you could correct me if I'm wrong there, but I believe it is. One of the top scorers last year. I believe he averaged 19 points per game. The problem with him is the efficiency. It was on 18.2 shots per game. So, while he's a good scorer, leading a big scorer, a big bulk scorer, he's still taking a ton of shots per game. So it's going to be really hard to see how that translates. He's also on the smaller side, and we know Pikel's trying to switch more towards those taller, bigger, lengthier guards. So he's around 6 foot listed. I think everyone knows those numbers are obviously not accurate after watching Ace Bailey go from 6'10" to 6'7" real quick. But oh damn, there you go.
There it is.
But yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. Pikel's been quoted a couple times this offseason saying that he's the team's leading shooter or best shooter so far from the outside specifically. I don't think he starts. I think he'll be like a 6-man type role. It's really hard to say 6-man though with this roster, just because in terms of the backcourt, he'll probably step in for either spot. In terms of this forward spot, there's someone else that will step in. In terms of the other forward spot, there's someone else that steps in. In center, obviously, there's going to backup center. But in terms of the backcourt, he'll probably be the first guard off the bench. And I think he's going to play significant minutes. How he's going to translate from that American East level to the Big Ten level, that's a giant question mark. He's also related to Brandon Knight, who I believe is his uncle, I think. I forget what the relationship is there. But
I'm not sure if it's blood related. It could be, but I'm not 100% sure. It might just be like a mentor, cousin, uncle type thing.
Yeah, so that's basically Tariq Francis in a nutshell.
Let's talk about Lino then, the true freshman from Notre Dame High School in Los Angeles. Don't know who in the panel would have the best background on them, but I'm assuming Richie. So talk to us about Lino.
Lino, California kid, took about 5 to 6 official visits. You don't really see that as much because I know they allow you to take as many official visits as you want, but it was just interesting to see. I know he came across the coast twice, actually. I think he went to Seton Hall the week before Rutgers, went back home, and then went back to Rutgers a week later. But yeah, coming over from California, played with some of the top kids in the country, played with AJ DeBansta in his AAU circuit with the Oakland Soldiers, I believe it was. Kind of made a really good connection with Marlon Williamson, Smoke Williamson, who's kind of got all the connects on the AAU scene. I'm intrigued to see what he can kind of do. He's a little bit taller. He's around 6'1", 6'2", listed, I believe. He's shifty. I liked him a lot in the lone practice we saw, but from what I was told recently, he's more of a reserve guy. He's kind of up and down, almost like a roller coaster, whereas like that one practice we saw was great, and then the next practice it's like bad, and then it's like you got to just kind of find that middle ground. I think he's better suited to run the offense than like say a Tariq Francis, or even you can even argue Jamichael Davis, but I don't really know how much offense this team's going to put out also. So I don't know if it really matters, but yeah, really talented kid, top 150 kid. Also played, who else did he play with? Alec, you might know. He was on that Notre Dame high school team that had another top 25 prospect in 26, 27.
I don't know if it was high school, but I remember he played, I think at the AAU ranks also with Tieran Stokes too.
Oh, Tieran
Who
Stokes.
was number one
Tieran Stokes transferred
26.
to Notre Dame, didn't he? I believe.
I don't know. I don't remember for sure.
I thought he did, but either way, very high basketball IQ. Does a little bit of everything, so we'll kind of see how he's kind of going to fit in there. He's actually known for his speed too. He was probably one of the fastest guys out there on the court. In the lone practice that we saw.
Yeah, he was winning every wind sprint that they did. He was winning them all.
And also for each player, let's kind of give like a guesstimation if they're going to be like a starter level player, a contributor level player, or like a depth guy. For Tariq Francis, it sounds like he's going to be at worst a contributor, possibly a starter. Lino Mark, where would you slot him in?
I'll say like rotational piece because he's probably that next guard after Tariq Francis. Now, it's hard to say. Actually, it's hard to say that because Harun Zrno's there too. I'll say he's probably like, let's say depth. Let's put him as depth piece because like he's got some ups and downs and he'll get minutes. I just don't know how many minutes. He'll probably get more minutes in out of conference play than actual conference play. But injuries, yada yada yada, all that other stuff.
All right, let's talk Kaden Powers then, the true freshman, 6'4", 195-pound guard out of Rainier Beach High School in Seattle, Washington. Richie,
me?
This is going to be all you.
All
I
right,
think you know the most about all these guys.
Actually, Alec actually knows a lot about Kaden Powers. Did a whole article on him about his relationship to.
Let's have Alec pick it up then.
Yeah. Also, just a note on the previous. You're right, Richie. Tieran Stokes did play for Notre Dame. Him and Lino Mark basically led the team in every single counting stat. But either way, Kaden Powers, from Seattle, pretty solid shooter. He was a pretty solid scorer. He played for Rainier Beach High School in Seattle, which is pretty notable as one of the best in the Washington area. The Seattle basketball scene kind of underrated, I'll say, because there's a lot of talent that comes through there. Some notable names from his high school: Jamal Crawford, who he has a relationship with. He was an assistant coach for Rainier Beach, also one of his mentors, who he started talking to around his sophomore year, I think, after he suffered an injury. Jamal Crawford, Doug Christie, Kevin Porter Jr., Nate Robinson, DeJounte Murray. So some big time guard names. He's a pretty solid shooter, pretty solid scorer, like I said. I thought it was very interesting when I talked to him at Media Day. He talked about that relationship he had with Jamal Crawford, which I thought was pretty cool. He led Rainier Beach to a state title as a senior. He played alongside a Jalen Petty, who's a freshman at Texas Tech. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of role he carves out for himself on this team, because, like I mentioned, there's a lot of guys in the guard room that can contribute. We'll see how that rotation kind of shakes out. But from what we saw in practice, he's a pretty smooth scorer. How ready is he going to be for college basketball? It's always a big-time jump, especially as a guard, going from high school to college. So it might be a little bit until we see a lot of him in terms of when he's at his best. But he has a chance to be – I don't think he'll be too much of a contributor this year, but there'll probably be games where he can get his shot and make some things happen. But I wouldn't say it's going to be on a consistent basis.
Where would you slot him in terms of your projection? Is he going to be starter level? Is he going to be like a contributor in the rotation, or you think he's going to be kind of a depth piece?
If I had to guess right now, probably a depth piece. There'll probably be times when he kind of puts himself into that contributor level based on, someone's got to make shots on the team. So if it happens to be his night, we could see that from him. But yeah, I'll probably put him as a depth piece for now. But I could always see him, like I said, being on the lower end of that contributor scale.
Let's move on to the next player in our countdown here. Darren Buchanan Jr., 6'7", 235-pound redshirt junior. He's going to be a wing/guard. Richie, tell us a little bit about him and where he slots in to this team.
Yeah, I think he's a full-time starter without question. This is a guy that Pikel got committed via the transfer portal without even having him step foot on campus. He's been to Rutgers multiple times in the past. Rutgers finished second in his recruitment out of high school. Goes to Virginia Tech for a year. Things don't work out. Goes to George Washington the year after that. I think he ended up putting like 15-plus points per game. Was one of the better players in the A10. No, yeah, A10. I was right on that. And then this past season, he actually lost his starting job, and then was still a rotational piece there. Had some issues. I believe he was working through an injury as well. So it's kind of an interesting scenario for him to go from a backup to George Washington to a starter at Rutgers, but he's tall, he's lengthy, he can guard, he can rebound. He's not going to score a ton of points, but there will be nights where he gets like 10-plus points per game. He's more of that he's kind of fits the Pikel mold almost perfectly. Like, he's got a really long wingspan. He can defend probably 2 through 4 with ease, and then he's got some weight to him too. So he can kind of, those fours that are the little bulkier ones will kind of be able to push up against a lot of people, but not against him. So you can kind of put him around in a couple different spots along the starting lineup. But yeah, I think he's like a full-fledged starter for sure. He's also, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a team captain.
He's definitely one of those. Go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, I think he was the first transfer they brought in during the offseason.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, because to show you how much, we thought of him, that he was the first guy he went after.
Steve Pikel has, since the offseason, described that he's built like a linebacker too. So he's kind of one of those really big wings that this defense is at its best when they have. And yeah, he was dealing with an ankle injury down the stretch at George Washington. Things just kind of didn't mesh from there. They also saw a breakout from Rafael Castro, who kind of, cut into some of his production in minutes, who's back at George Washington this year. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he translates to the Big Ten.
And this is a guy, after his redshirt freshman season, was getting legitimate like NBA hype. Like, if you go and look back in the archives, like I remember I found some article that was like literally like 5,000 words of a bunch of clips and cut ups about, all the things he does well and how that could translate possibly to the NBA. Last year, obviously things didn't go quite as expected, but this is a guy who's had some high level production on both offense and defense. It's just, can he, find that again? Steve Pikel obviously loved this kid out of high school. I think Rutgers came in second place in his high school recruitment. So I think he'll be a solid contributor as well. Continuing on, let's talk Chris Nwuli. He is the 6'8", 205-pound true freshman out of Las Vegas, Nevada. He's going to play a big /wing role, right, Richie? Where do you see him slotting into this team?
Yeah, he'll this is kind of goes hand in hand with the Francis role. Like, Francis is going to be the first guard off the bench. Nwuli is probably going to be the first forward off the bench. He is very, very, very talented. We got a chance to see a lot of him this offseason. Specifically, I think it was around January last year when his dynamic prep team, coached by Jermaine O'Neal, was in the Chipotle Nationals, one of the best teams in the country, and he just kept putting up numbers after numbers. He's a good rebounder. He's a lengthy wing. I've been told he's one of the top 2 defenders on the team right now. He can kind of do a little bit of everything. He's a kid that this is like the one you want to keep and hold on to for as long as you can and just continue to develop him. I think this year it's going to be tough to crack that starting lineup, but he could, don't get me wrong. But I think it's going to be tough to crack that starting lineup. But I do think he'll play a lot of minutes. I think he'll be one of your better scorers. He's pretty crafty around the rim, not afraid to finish with contact too. I really think his ranking speaks for itself. He was a top 100 kid. Like, he is probably the best kid in this recruiting class, and I'm including Dorian Jones, who also committed pretty late and is technically ranked higher, but I think Nwuli's the better player, and has the higher ceiling too. So I really think that this kid has star potential for Rutgers. It's just a matter of putting it all together, adding some weight to him too. He's very skinny, but again, length kind of fits the Darren Buchanan mold almost, just a little bit skinnier, or a lot of it skinnier.
Yeah, I guess the big knock with him was his jumper was a bit too inconsistent, but he had a lot of all of the other tools, and he also has a lot of experience playing at a lot of high level programs, playing against a lot of high level programs in high school. I played at Bishop Gorman, then Wasatch Academy in Utah, another pretty highly regarded one, the EYBL Scholastic, and then spent his senior year at Sierra Canyon in California, which pretty well known. And then Dynamic Prep, like you mentioned, made a run to the Chipotle Nationals Championship. They beat some really good teams in the Chipotle Nationals. They had to go through. So they played. They were the 10th and final seed in the entire tournament. They played Montverde, who, granted, not the same Montverde as 2 years ago when they had Cooper Flagg and 4 different first round NBA draft picks, but still pretty solid team. Then they pulled an upset against this 2 seed Link Academy, and then also the 6 seed Prolific Prep. With a ton of NBA talent, and then they ended up losing the championship to the Boozer Twins-led Columbus school in Florida. But he kind of blew up on the national stage when he scored 20 points and had 6 rebounds against Prolific Prep. I think AJ DePanza was on that team. I could be wrong. Or no, he was on Utah Prep last year. Scratch that. But Prolific Prep obviously is full of high major talent as well. So yeah, he really showed out towards the back half of his senior year. And you kind of really saw what he can provide as like a driver and a rebounder and a defender. So yeah, another guy who it might take a little bit to adjust, especially if he's going to be playing like down low as a semi kind of 4 big man. But there's definitely a high ceiling for him.
And additionally, Rich, this is a kid who as a sophomore was a borderline 5-star in the Rivals rankings. So this is a kid that has a ton of talent. And like you kind of mentioned, his jumper was inconsistent. And I think that's what kind of pushed him back. But he's just oozing with talent, and that's kind of what we've heard from the staff too. Is this is a kid that could really become a star here if he sticks around for a few years and develops.
Yeah, I think he was top 25 at one point. Going into his junior year, now that the jumper kind of threw things off, and you get to see more of these kids, and sometimes it happens. He had a pretty significant drop in the rankings down to like 120, but now I think he finished in the top 90, top 80, something like that. So very talented though.
Let's continue on here on our countdown. The next player up is Harun Zrno. He's a 6'7", 220-pound guard he's listed at from Bosnia. This kid we added late. I think he was he was a guy that they landed that Indiana really wanted, Villanova really wanted, but Rutgers was able to reel him in. Talk a little bit about him as a player and where you see him fitting into this team.
He's a very weird one. So like when we first heard that Rutgers got him, there was a lot of hype that he was going to be their leading scorer this year. Now things, it sounds like, are starting to change. He'll still play a role. He'll still come off the bench probably. I'll call him a contributor. He was known as one of their best shooters in early practices, and we kind of saw glimpses of that throughout the lone practice that we saw. But now it sounds like he's kind of been up and down a lot. He's been a little bit inconsistent with that jumper, especially from the outside. He kind of struggles with defense, and if you're going to struggle with defense, we know Pikel's basically just not going to play you. We've seen in the past where Jaden Jones was projected to average like 10-plus points per game as a freshman, but he was so bad on defense that I don't think played a single minute for the first couple of games. So if you're not going to be able to play defense, you're not going to be able to rebound. It's going to be tough to crack a Steve Pikel starting lineup or even rotation at this point. But I do think he's got a good enough jumper, and with a team that really is going to struggle on offense, it looks like, he's going to have to get some minutes. His recruitment was very, very weird for the sole fact that he came out of nowhere for Indiana. A lot of people that I've talked to at Indiana had said it was just Mike Woodson trying to get a recruiting win before he was getting fired, just to try to like make himself look better. Okay, you just got a recruiting win. All right, fine. Maybe you're doing something right. In reality, they ended up dropping him pretty quickly when the new coach came in. Villanova worked him out, and it sounded like he was a Villanova lean. But when they worked him out, they kind of said thanks, but no thanks. Then there comes Rutgers, and a couple other schools were in on him too. He is a high major caliber prospect. I just don't know in reality what he can do. Just based on his tape, it's so hard to judge because of the league he plays in. And I believe it was in Bosnia. And it's just the talent there is brutal. It's like me going up against Harun Zrno. And I mean, I'd lock him down personally. I wouldn't let him shoot wide open threes like that. That's what I'm saying. I'm ready to go. I wouldn't let him shoot open threes, but it was like he was wide open on almost every shot with like no one even close to him on defense. So
Richie's knees would be click-clacking down the court. I could already hear it.
I still play today. I'd be fine.
Click-clack. I think they hear Richie coming. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
The old Under Armour commercials. All right. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah, R.I.P. Let's keep moving along here. Gevonte Ware is next on the list. He is the 6'9", 255-pound freshman center out of a 1-of-1 academy. He's from Roosevelt, New York. Talk to us about Gevonte Ware and where he fits into this team.
Gevonte Ware isn't going to play a whole lot. On top of it all, it sounds like he got banged up recently. I think he's back now, but he was dealing with some I believe it was I forget what the exact issue was, but he was dealing with a minor injury. I think he's back now. He's a weird prospect for the sole fact that he's a big man that's probably too slow to guard fours, but he's too small to guard fives. And I feel like it's lather, rinse, repeat. And it's almost Lathan Somerville, but with a lot, it's a mean thing to say, with less talent. Gevonte Ware, he just doesn't have the dribbling ability that Lathan Somerville have. Lathan's offensive ability, skill set was like through the roof for a big man. He was just really undersized in the Big Ten. How he's going to translate at Washington, we'll wait and see, especially because they just keep adding big men. I think they just added another European big man like 2 weeks ago. So I don't even know if he's going to play there personally, but Gevonte Ware's a bulky guy. He's almost built like Antoine Woolfolk, but bigger, I think. I just don't see much of a role for him this season. I think, if anything, I thought he was going to be the third big man in the rotation with Emmanuel Ogbole, Baye, and maybe Gevonte Ware, but I'm starting to lean against that. And I'm starting to think Bryce George is probably going to play more emergency five if need be. In an ideal world, they don't even get to Gevonte Ware, and you don't have to play him at that point, and redshirt him, let him get in a little bit better shape and see what he can do next year. But this is it's a weird one. Also, because he comes from a 1-of-1 prep academy down in North Carolina. If you look up where the location is, it's just a warehouse that's a basketball gym. So I don't even know if that's considered school at this point. So it is wild how that works. But it seems like Rutgers is making a little bit of a connection down there, and they do have some top prospects. As they have a couple offers sent out to future classes in the 1-on-1 prep too.
Let's keep it moving along then. Dorian Jones is next on the list. Dorian Jones is a 6'4", 160-pound true freshman shooting guard out of Ohio. He was a guy that Rutgers was heavily involved with as a high school recruit. He signs with Ohio State, ends up backing out of that, released from his LOI, and ends up at Rutgers. Richie, talk to us a little bit about how Dorian Jones landed here and what you expect from him this season.
Listen, 160 pounds. I'm 165. Like that's I could lock him up. I'm pretty sure. That's another one I could definitely lock up. But no, Dorian Jones is a tall, lengthy. Don't give me that face, Alec. I saw that. He's a taller, lengthier guard. He was very talented out of high school. Can do more of a 3-and-D guy. Everyone was raving about his shooting ability, but like the more you watch the tape, the more you look at the numbers, he is more of a specific, more, I shouldn't say 3-and-D. He's more of a slashing defender, put it like that. He kind of fits the Pikel mold. Now he needs to add a lot of weight, like 160 pounds in Big Ten. You will get crushed and smothered and just bullied basically. Now how he ended up at Rutgers is really interesting. So Rutgers, ironically, again, finished second in his recruitment out of high school. Up to the point where it was a week before his commitment date, and I think it was actually even closer now. It was only a couple days before his commitment date. We had Rutgers graphics, we had Rutgers quotes. He was all in on Rutgers.
I think it was like 1 day before.
Yeah, and then Ohio State decides to say, you know what, we're going to push for this kid. He's an Ohio kid. Fuck it, we're going to take him. They took him. Something happened academically where he wasn't able to get into Ohio State. He signed with Ohio State, but wasn't able to get in. Reopens his recruitment in the summertime. We heard like a week after he reopened his recruitment that he was going to Rutgers, and then nothing happened for about 2 to 3 months. Then I believe it was August, and we're sitting there in August, and we're like, okay, well, anything? No, still, we're just going to rock with this roster. Okay, that's fine. And then all of a sudden he comes out and commits to Rutgers. Now, he's technically not eligible. I've heard he's not going to be eligible for the rest of this semester. There's a chance he's eligible in January when the new semester kicks in. How that works academically and eligibility and all that other nonsense, I have no idea, because the NCAA, as it is currently, is just a shit show. Maybe they could technically make him eligible before that. But he went to summer school, got his academics in order. Sounds like that's how he was able to enroll. In terms of, again, when he's going to be eligible for Rutgers to play him, even if he's eligible in January, which it sounds like might happen, he's probably not going to play a whole lot of minutes. He's way too skinny. He needs to bulk up a lot. That kid needs to be in the weight room 24/7. Feed him as much food as you can, and just keep packing on the pounds and figure it out after. But I do think the talent's there. Like I said before, he's a really good slasher. He's able to attack the rim. He's a really good defender. His 3-point shot's decent. I won't say it's great. It's definitely decent, but he's got all the tools. There's a reason he's top 80 prospect, top 75 prospect in the country. So the talent's there. It's just a matter of packing on the weight and being eligible. He's
another guy who really showed out in the EYBL ranks. I think they're EYBL in the All Ohio Red AAU program. So yeah, I definitely like what I saw in terms of what he put out there on tape, but also he joined the team late, so he didn't really practice in the summer session. How much is he going to be able to practice, if he's not eligible? I don't really know how that works. How are you able to practice if you're not technically eligible? I don't.
You can practice, no problem.
Okay, so
Jet Eli wasn't eligible in practice.
That's true. So that at least helps a little bit. But yeah, he's another guy who I think like you said, Richie, a bit too. He doesn't have enough on him to really contribute right away, even when he does get eligible. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's more on the doesn't play a whole lot scale this year, and then all signs point to next year being the year he kind of really starts to get his feet wet in college basketball.
Let's keep it moving here. Dennis Badalau is the 6'8", 200-pound freshman out of Romania. A lot of hype growing around this kid from the preseason camps. Richie, tell us what Rutgers is getting in this kid, and also how much you expect him to play this year.
There's no tape out there at all on him. This kid is, I'll use a good reference that Craig will understand. This kid's basically the Riddler. There's just a giant question mark on him. We have no idea what the hell he is. When we saw him, I think we actually joked around and we were like, hey, that guy looks like he's in Richie's men's league. It was a serious statement. He was a little bit slower. He wasn't really in that good a shape. Now, apparently things have turned the corner for him, and sounds like he potentially could be in the starting lineup this year. How that starting lineup is going to work, I'm deathly afraid of, even looking at it. But apparently he's been one of their best 3-point shooters. Apparently he's one of their best defenders. When I said before Chris Nwuli was one of their best, and there was someone else, it was Dennis Badalau. I don't know how to pronounce it. But yeah, it sounds like he does a little bit of everything, and it sounds like Pikel loves him. There's a lot of hype around him. We're seeing him all over social media on top of it all. People within the program are hyping him up to me, saying dude, watch out for this kid. Watch out for this kid. It's so hard to tell though, because he played in a really good European league, in the Italian league, but he really didn't play in the Italian league. He was a deep reserve bench role in the Italian league. He had some numbers in terms of I think it was the Euro under 20s or the Euro under, or whatever it was, Euro championships. There's so many different teams out there. There's the Euro 19s, 20s, 21s, et cetera, et cetera. But he played pretty well in that for, goddamn, Alec, you might know. What country is he from?
He's from Romania.
Romania. So he played pretty well for them in those things, in those championships or whatever you want to call it. But in terms of the Italian league, he didn't do a whole lot. And there's really no tape on him at all. There's a couple clips here and there, but it's just so hard to know what this guy's going to be. But there's a lot of fucking hype around him.
He mentioned during the media day, there's not a lot of showmanship allowed in the Italian league, so we'll have to look out to see if he has some celebrations in there, if he's the next, Peter Kiss with his celebrations.
He also said how what was it? He's like, school over here is easy. It's like, because you don't even have to go to class. Like you don't pay attention here. No one cares. You don't pay attention over there. Teachers are yelling. I was like, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, I think a part of that is all the online classes too, which certainly helps in college. But he's going to be interesting. I think he has his ceiling, at least for this year, I think could be like a potential Swiss Army knife type guy. I didn't see a lot of the 3-point shot from what we saw the one time that we were able to watch him, but that's going to be a big swing factor, how big of a contributor he is, because like I said, I mean, it's 6'8". I feel like he has a solid handle. His mid-range has been solid enough. So I feel like he can be that potential Swiss Army knife guy. Now, would I want him in the starting lineup?
Army knife.
Yeah, that's true. Would I want him in the starting lineup right away? I don't. I mean, if he shows out, then that would be great for him to be able to play that early. But I feel like he's a little bit farther away in terms of development. But if he's one of the best players, then then he's one of the best players. But I think he's able to do a lot on the floor, at least from what we were able to see. So I'm interested to see how much he plays and what he does with that playing time.
Let's round out the new faces with a familiar name, at the very least. Baye. He's a 6'11", 205-pound center out of Senegal. He initially started his career off at Arkansas and transferred after his freshman year to Kansas State, where he is coming to Rutgers from. Rutgers was finished, I want to say they finished second in his high school recruitment. He was a guy that the staff really targeted. He took an official visit here, and in a long line of it's sometimes better to finish second with some of these guys, Rutgers has found a way to land him. Richie, talk to us about Baye and where you expect him to kind of land in the rotation this year.
Yeah, so Baye, I actually think he's going to be the first center off the bench, if that helps, if that makes sense. I don't think he'll start, but I think the bench number or the center numbers specifically are going to be kind of almost split down the middle. It's probably going to be like a 20-20 split. If I had to guess, now that's a scary thought considering the other center's not that good, considering this center is in his third year and hasn't played much at all. So it's very scary. Now, the potential was there for Baye. He was a top 30 prospect. He was a borderline 5-star, like Mike said. Now, Rutgers wasn't second in his recruitment. I don't even think they were third in his recruitment. I actually think he was going to end up at Seton Hall over Rutgers, personally. But he did take an official visit to Rutgers. He took an official visit to Auburn, Seton Hall, Arkansas. Actually, 2 official visits to Auburn because technically the school years you're allowed to take. This was before the 5+ visits. But he has a lot of – he looked really good out of high school. I'm looking back at some of his tape right now. Like the length is obviously there. It's 6'11", 7 foot borderline. Pikel's already raved about him as a shot blocker. He's really fluid in his movements. He actually has a decent offensive game too. Like he's able to shoot the ball from all the way out to the 3-point line, but he's extremely, I can't say extremely enough, extremely raw on offense. He doesn't really know what he's supposed to do out there. He doesn't have the basketball IQ. It almost seems like he's a little bit lost. His arms are so lengthy that they're kind of just flailing around on defense too. And he's able to get those shot blocks, but in reality, he's also causing a ton of fouls. Like, for example, we heard in the Towson game or Towson scrimmage, pre-secret scrimmage, not secret scrimmage, that he basically, or not just him specifically, but the team was just a fouling mess. We saw it in our own practice between the three of us, between me, Craig, and Alec. The team fouled 100,000 times. Even Pikel joked about it in practice afterwards. He was like, yeah, like if they were tracking fouls today, we would have had like 50. And it's like, yeah, no, we saw.
And he said that on the Big Ten Network too. He said we might foul out every game.
Yeah, honestly. And this is culprit number 1 right here, and it's Baye. Now, there's a reason that he played for Calipari, and then who was Kansas State's head coach?
Jerome Tang.
Jerome Tang. Played for both of them. Or I shouldn't say played for both of them. Was on a team for both of them and didn't play at all for either of them. If you're a 5-star caliber center and you're able to be the team's best shot blocker, you still could probably find a role for him in late game or something. But he barely played for both those programs, and it's extremely concerning. So it's almost like another Dennis Badalau situation where we really don't know what he is. He hasn't really played significant minutes in, we're talking 3 years now. So it's really hard to see what he can do and can't do. I mean, he's athletic. He's a big man. He actually had a decent mid-range shot, if I recall, during that one practice. And we've seen clips of it on social media too. But yeah, really good shot blocker. Just the basketball IQ is not there. Really, no offensive game. It's a work in progress offensively, I should say. So.
And the fouling, I was just going to mention, you get nervous, especially in this league. I mean, if you get the reputation of you're a defense that basically fouls more often than not, and if they end up being, one of the worst, one of the worser, if that's a word, teams in this league, they get that reputation, and Big Ten refs, you see, have a quick whistle a lot, and they could find themselves, going to, like we said, that emergency center and finding themselves fouling out a bunch of times, and that's just, again, Pikel's defense don't work if guys are fouling out.
Yeah, it's a risk. Don't get me wrong. That's a huge risk for your center spot, especially because you're probably starting Emmanuel Ogbole for the second year in a row. So, but it's a risk you have to take personally. Like, that's a 5-star caliber kid if you can somehow put it together.
Oh yeah, if they can mold him into what he's expected to be, then that would be
Even like
he'd be
a sliver of what he was expected to be.
Because he's got like the talent, he's got the traits, but it's just about putting it together.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we've seen far too many instances of Rutgers centers, getting those 2 fouls within by the 17-minute mark and having to sit them for the rest of the half. So we'll see if that becomes a problem. Mike had to split out for a second, so to pull a Bill Simmonsism, I'll drive the car in this next segment. So this one this one won't take as long. We'll go to the returning players next. We kind of already know kind of a lot about them. I guess we'll go through two of the ones that are expected to be in the starting lineup. We can kind of bunch them together since we kind of already know what we have in them as players at Rutgers. Dylan Grant and Jamichael Davis. Jamichael Davis probably going to be one of the captains on this team. Steve Pikel's raved about his leadership. I guess for Craig and Richie, what are you guys expecting from those two? I guess if you want to talk about one of each or both. What are you guys expecting from
I've
those
talked
two?
enough. Craig, you go first.
No, yeah, I think pound for pound, Dylan Grant could probably end up being the best player on this team. We saw flashes of it really last year that he kind of is just a really good all-around player, and if he can just continue developing his offensive game, as we've seen, he's got a good defensive game. I'm really high on Dylan Grant. I think he could be, like I said, the best. I think he could end up being the best player on this team, and like you said, team captain. I'm expecting definite starter in my opinion. And Jamichael Davis Jamichael Davis is an interesting one because I think honestly at this point I kind of think he is what he is. He's a very good defender. He's going to defend, they're probably their quickest guard on the team. He's going to be your really main defender. And offensively, it's just, it's kind of been at best back and forth. I mean, there's been times where you've seen he's had a pretty good offensive game, but then there's also times, I mean, we basically joke around, take a shot every time Jamichael Davis kind of takes the ball and just goes into the teeth of the defense by himself and gets blocked. And it's just like, those type of things just kind of he just has to kind of fix those things. He's just like we say, he's not a big guy. He's kind of on the small side. So it's just about if he can develop that shot, just develop a little bit more of a shot and just be smarter offensively. I think he's probably going to be the starting point guard for this team. And I'm thinking he's probably, at least early on, is going to be the conductor of this offense. Whereas, kind of Dylan Harper was that last year. Jamichael Davis is probably going to be that going into this year. And it's just like, it's a little bit of a drop off, to be honest, when you're going from Dylan Harper to Jamichael Davis. But the hope is that he can just continue developing and just become, the guy that they hope that they could be.
It's a real drop off. It's a real hot take there that going from the number 2 pick in the NBA draft to a guy in his third year, it might be a drop off.
The thing though, if you remember when he was a freshman, there was some thought that he could develop into a possible NBA type player. So I mean,
who said that?
Wait, wasn't there?
No,
weren't there? Weren't there scouts early on that kind of like thought
they saw him practice and they said he was running the offense nice. Yes,
that's what I'm saying. Is
right.
that
okay.
I don't expect him to be an NBA player, but there was thought early on that he had the type of qualities that who knows. But it's just like I mean, as time has gone on, we've seen he's not that type of player. But again, it's just if he can just continue just developing, and this is what year 3 of these years that. He's one of the most, experienced guys on this team, probably the most experienced guy on this team. So he knows this the style that they're going to play inside and out. So it's just about let's just see what he's got. He's going to have the opportunities this year.
He's a great defender. I don't think he should be running the offense personally. He's too risky with the ball, especially when how many blown layups did he have last year? Like it's just a very risky. You don't have an option though. Actually, I take it back. It's risky, but you don't have an option really. It's either put Lino Mark out there, who I just said before has had some ups and downs during camp. You put out Tariq Francis, who's 6 foot nothing, maybe shorter than that, and let him maybe do something, but he's probably going to get bullied a little bit. So it's like it's a lot of risk, and this is what Steve Pikiell wants. He wants a defensive first team, and you're going to get a defensive first point guard. It's not meant for him specifically to run the offense, but he's going to have to. Now, I need his free throw percentage also to take another leap. It went from 52% in the first year to 65%. That's still not good enough. Like, especially for a guy that's probably going to be driving at the rim and probably going to be drawing fouls, you got to hit more than that. His field goal percentage didn't change from year 1 to year 2, which is kind of crazy. 37%. His 3-point percentage was a little bit better. He was more consistent last year, but he needs to continue to develop that. I just have a lot of question marks about this point guard spot, and specifically just because there's not really a true facilitator, honestly.
Yeah, he definitely took a step forward at times last year. Like he had the 20-point game against Michigan. It was weird. There were stretches where where his free throws looked much, much better. I think in that Michigan game, he shot like 9 of 9 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So if he can continue to take steps there, last year he shot 47.5% at the rim. 33% from 3, and then his other 2-pointers not at the rim, but like I guess around the mid range, 24.3%. So need to see a boost in some of those efficiency numbers if you want to see him take a step forward as an offensive player. Now the other start probably that's what it was, USC. Yeah. I think like 6 of those 8 were in like the final 30 seconds of the game. Yep. Like he essentially iced the game that night. Yeah. Now I guess the other big time returner, Dylan Grant, we saw him in spurts last year. It kind of took him a little bit to fully find his footing, but once he did, he actually had some really solid performances. What do you guys expect to see from Dylan Grant this year?
I think Dylan Grant, like Craig kind of said before, he's probably the best player pound for pound on the team. I think he's developing his outside shot a lot more. He was hitting a couple last year. His numbers really aren't that great from the outside, but there were a lot of moments where he was hitting a clutch 3-pointer. Now, guys were leaving him open last year. I don't think that's going to happen as much this season. I think teams are going to kind of keen in on that for the sole fact that this team's really lacking offense. That, okay, if that's their only offensive threat on the outside, cover him. Like, stop giving him open shots. Now, that being said, I think he's a hell of a rebounder. He should have probably played from day one, even though he did miss his senior year of high school. But when he did play, a couple weeks in, he really showed a lot of promise. He showed that he's kind of that 4-man that Steve Pikiell loves. He can defend, he can rebound. He's improving his outside shot. He can do a little bit of everything. He's probably a team captain, again, kind of joining Darren Buchanan there, maybe even Jamichael in that category too. But yeah, I really think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's one of the better players in the Big Ten. I think he'll be one of the better defenders at the 4, 3. I don't know what he's going to play this year in the Big Ten. It's going to be really interesting to see what his role is and how it translates and how other guys around him are going to work in this starting lineup, because this starting lineup has a lot of questions about it depending on what it could be and what it can't be. But I think Dylan Grant's a really good player, and I think he's going to have a really good year.
Yeah, he made his first, I guess, big action against Texas A&M in the Players era, and he showed some pretty solid rebounding chops, especially against one of the best rebounding teams in the country. And then he really started to get his opportunity around like midway through January when they needed somebody to step up. And speaking of someone who needed to step up, we'll move on to the next guy, Bryce Dortch. He was not really expecting to play much last year, but then once Emmanuel Ogbole went down, who we'll talk about next, they needed someone at the big man spot. He stepped up. He played center a few times. Props to him for that, especially, he's a guy who's on the skinnier side, about 6'9" or so. I guess, what are you guys expecting in year 2 from Bryce Dortch?
Yeah, I think Bryce Dortch is just like you said, it's a very interesting one, just because right now he's probably, again, the emergency third big, but at the same time, he's kind of, like you said, he's still kind of on the skinny side, and so it's going to be interesting to see how really they use him. But he showed some. I think he showed some flashes last year, and showed again. I think it's just a lot of a lot of just seeing how these guys develop, where I think he could end up being, if he can continue development, he could end up being, a typical pretty much just player that, I don't know if he's going to ever really crack the starting lineup, but he could be a serious contributor for this team game in and game out. So it's just a lot. Yeah, it's just a lot of unknowns, and I'm very interested to see how he develops. He showed he can play pretty good defense, but it's just about getting that offensive side of the ball, getting it going. And it's just because, like we said, for this team, where are the points coming from? And it would be nice if a possible, if Emmanuel Ogbole and Baye find those early whistles, if you could depend on Bryce Deutsch to kind of slide in and not have, a huge drop off.
I mean, this is a guy that's going to be a deep reserve bench option, in my opinion. I don't think he plays all that much. It's the same guy that paid like 10 minutes last year and had like 4 fouls. Like it's another problem. It's another guy that's probably fouling too much. He did have that one game, I believe, where he went like 3 of 3, 5 of 5, something crazy.
That was also the USC game.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the same game, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also I found it actually. He also had 4 fouls in that game in 14 minutes. He just fouled a lot last year. He doesn't have a great jumper. He doesn't really have a good offensive game. Defensively, he could probably be solid with his length and everything, but he's a deep reserve option. I think I'm trying to think. Yeah, he'll probably play he should be a 4, but he's more of a 5 in this one, just for the sole fact that Rutgers really doesn't have a third 5 that is going to be able to play significant minutes, which might have to happen, unfortunately.
And last but not least, the fourth and final returner, Emmanuel Ogbole, who we think is probably going to be the starting center. This is, I guess, his 2.5 year. He kind of joined midway through 2 years ago. Ended up getting hurt against Penn State last year. Was supposed to be after the season, but then somehow came back, ended up playing the last few games. Again, we think he's going to be the starting center. What are you expecting from that spot from him this year?
Yeah, I hate to say I'm not very high on Emmanuel Ogbole, just because, again, I think the best quality about him is that he's been here for now a couple of years, about probably same as Jay, like 3 years now, and just he's kind of been all over the place. He came in as kind of a third string, then he was as the third guy, then he's second, then he finds himself as the starting center last year, but that didn't last until Lathan Somerville took it over, and now he's back to being the starter. So he's just he's kind of just been all over the place, and he's shown he's had good games here and there, but just not enough to really depend on, to go into a season, hyped that he's your starting center. And I think we've said it before and we say it again, that pretty much in a Steve Pikiell defense, the center is really your anchor we've seen in the past between Miles Johnson and Cliff, that this defense really needs a rim protecting center. I mean, we've said it, and with going out for looking for transfer portals, but second straight year, Steve Pikiell is kind of just sticking by Emmanuel Ogbole, and to be honest, it's just I just really haven't seen it with him. That I kind of go into the season similar to last season, where I'm thinking that if Baye doesn't take that starting center at some point this season, then that's probably not a good thing. Just because I think Emmanuel Ogbole kind of just is what he is at this point, and it's just not what Rutgers needs at the starting center position.
This is going to sound extremely mean. He is not a high major center. I don't even know if he's a mid-major center. He might be the most muscular guy in all of college basketball. He has 6'10", 6'11", 265-ish. He's ripped, jacked, and all that. He must be in the weight room 24/7. Respect for that. But when it comes to the court, he's like wet toilet paper. He is soft. It just pulls apart and falls apart. He is the softest guy on the court, and it drives me nuts because he's so big that he should be able to do so much more with the ball, even just backing down people, boxing out people. Hell, there was one play last year on an inbound where I think his foot was on the line, right? Or he stepped over the line on the inbound. Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's because it was an inbound from the left side of the rack.
Mm-hmm.
And we were watching it from our point of view at the press box. It's behind the 118, RIP 118, no longer there. But where 118 used to be, and he stepped over the line on the inbounds. And it was a crucial game. It was a crucial moment. And it was what the fuck? Not only that, he's a hack machine. Like, it's just foul after foul after foul after foul. And I
It's
know,
like the third. It was
Go
like the
on.
third time we brought this up. I think that was also the USC game because that was the
Really?
game. I think
Jesus.
that was the game he like came back for.
It might be. That's
Yeah,
actually kind of
I think.
crazy if it was.
Yeah,
that.
He
that
played
sounds-
like 2 minutes and then made 2 mistakes and then came out and didn't really return.
Yeah, I'm like looking now. He had 3 fouls against Wagner last year in 5 minutes. Like it's just going to happen again all over. And it's not his fault. I blame the coaching staff more than anything. How is he your starting center going into this year? Going into any year? After watching what he did last season and the year before that, he's just not a high major player. That being said, the scariest part about it all is JUCO years don't count, right? Technically. So technically he has another year after this. Like, I'm sorry. And I'm sounding extremely mean here, but he should not be your starting center. You cannot convince me every year that there's so much hype around him. Peichel said, oh, he's really improved. He's really doing well. He's doing great. And then he proceeds to be arguably the worst center in the Big Ten. And I think he's probably the worst center in the Big Ten again this year. And I don't even know, like, half the rosters. Like,
Yeah, that's the part that really makes me kind of feel bad for him, is that he's just shown you that he's just not really capable. Like, he is probably the worst center going into the Big Ten going into the season, and he showed that last year. And we basically said the same exact thing last year going into the season, and they just continue to stick by him. And it's just like they're just putting him in this position that if he struggles once again, people are just going to get on him. But at the same time, it's kind of like he's just shown you he's just not capable of being a starting everyday, caliber Big Ten center, but they just keep sticking by him.
Yeah, and to clarify on one thing that Richie said, like, I don't think it's for a lack of like effort or trying or whatever.
No, he
the
tries.
whole soft
Mhm.
thing. He just doesn't really know how to use his frame the right way. Which you can see in certain points when he's defending a post up, trying to box out, going up for a rebound. That's a thing that's kind of an indictment of the coaching staff that he hasn't developed that way, despite, like you said, Richie, being an absolutely massive human being. I think Steve Peichels described him as built like an ox or something like that. And then the fact that that's the best option, that's on the team right now. And I get it. Centers are really, really expensive. They are probably the most expensive position in high school. Well, not even really high school recruiting, but in the transfer portal, which is where you really need a good center in the transfer portal because you need someone established. But it's just the fact that this is the best option is not very encouraging. And Craig, like you said, the rim protecting center is the anchor of Steve Peichels' defense. Whether it's Miles Johnson, whether it's Cliff Amori, everything kind of funnels to them to try to deter shots at the rim. So we went through the returners. We kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I guess time for projected starting lineup. So Richie, I guess I'll let you go first. What is your projected starting lineup for this Rutgers team?
what do I want it to be, or what is it going to be?
You could do both if you want. As a free
that's
free show.
What I would like it to be personally, I think I'd rock with the freshman and Mark at the 1. I'd probably put Jamichael at the 2. Honestly, I think his defending will help, and especially like if Lino Mark's not a great defender at first. Those 2, I'd probably go Darren Buchanan at the 3, Dylan Grant at the 4, and I'd probably start Bayfall at the 5. But Bayfall's probably going to foul out in 5 minutes, so it is what it is. We'll just give it a try, see what it works. What I think it's going to be, and this is where it gets really scary. I heard this from someone within the program the other day, so take it for what it's worth. Mike, Darren Buchanan at the 2, Dylan Grant at the 3, Dennis Badalau, whatever, at the 4, and Emmanuel Ogbole at the 5. So if that's the starting lineup, you're not scoring 55 points a game. I don't know.
No,
I'm so down on this team. I'm sorry. I sound so depressing, but it's just like.
What about you, Craig?
No, I honestly think the starting lineup, the one that Richie said, looks like he's going to be a starting lineup. I would probably just switch out Badalau for Zrno, just because, again, I think somebody on this team has to score. And as we've heard, although, like you said, Richie, that I guess the hype is dying down a little bit on Zrno's shooting offensive abilities. But at the same time, I'm just a little skeptical because, as we've seen in the past, Zrno, again, he's from what we've seen, he's not super great. He doesn't create his own shot. He's a guy you're probably going to have to get open shots for it. But as we've seen in the past, whether it was Zach Martini, PJ Hayes, Ace Bailey, that they struggled getting these guys open shots. So if Zrno is a good shooter, but he's not getting open shots, then and he's kind of a step slow, and it's just like find a way to get this guy good looks, and so he can use that offensive shooting capabilities to score these points. But honestly, it's just hard to see with that lineup that you said, Richie, is probably gonna be the lineup. Where's the scoring coming from? So that's the part that's really just kind of scary and a little aggravating. But I guess we'll see and find out. But for me, if it was the starting lineup, I would probably go. Well, like I said, I would probably switch out with Zrno. And in a perfect world, I think Baye would be the starting center, because that means he had a good enough offseason that he overtook a guy in Emmanuel Ogbole, who we said unfortunately is probably the worst starting center in the Big Ten. So I would like to see Baye take those reins, but I just don't think that's going to happen, at least starting the season. Maybe it'll be like a little bit of a Lathan Somerville thing, where as the season progresses and he starts to develop more and find more of just kind of hone his game in and not be such a wild man on the court, that hopefully he can get that starting center role and just give them what they need at center.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of similar to, like you mentioned, Craig. That was actually something I was going to mention too last year, where Ogbole, started out the season as the starting center, but even like within games early on in the season, Ogbole would play about 5 or so minutes, and then Lathan Somerville will come in pretty quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that with Baye, if he comes in, early on in games, something like that, as long as he can keep his fouls down, which obviously is, easier said than done. So we'll see how that works out. So yeah, the starting lineup, Richie, that you said that you'd heard from someone is a bit worrying in my mind, because there's not a lot of floor spacing there. I mean, I don't know if there's any, plus shooter, unless Badalau is one of the team's best shooters. There's not really much of a plus 3-point shooter there. So where's the offense going to come from? Now, obviously, starting lineup only means so much, especially with Steve Pikiell. Like we've heard from him and other players, where it's like the starting five is, it's only one lineup. It's like, there's not really starters per se. We've heard, them and the team say at some points. So it could be much different as the game goes along. I feel like Buchanan at the 2 kind of dilutes some of what he's best at, where he's a big guy. He's a big wing. And he's a really solid defender. I feel like he's at his best when he's guarding some of those bigger wings as well in the Big Ten. And we know there's plenty of those in the Big Ten. So I feel like he's at his best when he's in that role, in that regard. Against 2 guards, I don't know how effective he'll be. Now, offensively, he probably will be more effective when he's attacking those 2 guards off the dribble and going towards the basket. So that'll probably help him in that regard. But the spacing is definitely a bit worrying in that lineup. But I guess the one that the 5 that we've been kind of talking about for a while has been, Jamichael Davis at the 1, someone like Harun Zrno at the 2, though now that Richie, you've mentioned that, he's been up and down, which, I mean, is not unexpected for a freshman. He's been up and down, him at the 2, and then Buchanan at the 3, Grant at the 4, and then one of Ogbole or Fall at the 5. So we'll see how it all rolls out. Mike, you're back just in time for our next part, where we talked about the starting, all the returners in the starting lineup. So next up, we got the ceiling / floor, the bull bear case, whatever you want to call it. Mike, after your brief absence, you want to start out with what you're thinking in that regard?
Sure. I think the ceiling for this team is Steve Pikiell has got these guys playing, his vintage style defense. I still think scoring is going to be a problem, but he's able to kind of, get a bunch of unexpected wins at the rack. Rutgers goes 6-14, 7-13 in conference, is on the NIT bubble, and into the Big Ten tournament, we are a 500 team and pushing for an NIT bid. The floor case for this team.
You mean the crown? Just the hype's about the crown nowadays.
That's true. Yeah, like the crown over the NIT. The floor for this team is, they're predicted to be 17th by the media. The floor is 18th in the Big Ten, and that's a realistic floor because, the offense is going to take time to develop on this team. If the defense is disjointed as last year, I think we could see a bottoming out, a low watermark for Steve Pikiell in his tenure at Rutgers. How about you guys?
Hey, I was just going to say, for me, the ceiling and the floor, I don't know, just I don't want to cop out, but it's just like it doesn't feel that much different from kind of the expectation. Where I think right now I kind of have them at the number of like a 13-18, 6-14 Big Ten, 7-4 out of conference, where maybe they can get the sweep against like a Maryland and like a Penn State. So that, these tack on those 2 more wins, you find yourself 15-16, 8 and 12 in the Big Ten. But yeah, that to me, that's kind of, and maybe that gets you pushing for the crown, pushing for NIT. I'm not sure, to be honest. You'd have to see how the teams shake out, but that's kind of the ceiling I see with this team, because I don't think they're going to beat any of the top, those better teams. Maybe if you want to say maybe, because Seton Hall every year is pretty much to kind of throw your record book out the window when those 2 teams play. So if you want to give them a win, you can add that one. So that gets you to 16 wins. So maybe a 16-win season, which I mean would be, I think, for what our expectations are, would be pretty good for what we're expecting. But but for the floor wise, it's probably, again, I guess there's not much lower you can go when you're picked 17 and there's 18 spots. So I guess the floor is an 18 in the Big Ten, 10-ish win season, that you just lose basically pretty much all of your quote unquote toss up games, those Marylands and the Penn States and the Seton Hall type of teams. Maybe Northwestern, we'll see. But that's kind of just, things could get pretty ugly. And I guess if I was to lean one way or the other, I would lean that this season is probably going to be more on the ugly side than the pretty side.
A wise man once said, "The ceiling is the roof." Now, what does this mean for Rutgers basketball? Absolutely nothing. The way I'm thinking about this kind of floor ceiling, bull, bear scenario type thing is something that Aaron Brightman, I thought, put really well in his season preview and for the Scarlet Faithful. If they want to try to reach the ceiling, their best outcome, they have to stick out at something. You have to do something because, the Big Ten is honestly might be the best it's been. I know we say this every year, but this might be the best iteration of the Big Ten. Penn State, and I guess you could say Rutgers, is really the only – I don't even want to say Penn State's much of a pushover, but they're probably the team that Rutgers has the biggest talent advantage over. And even then, Mike Rhodes is a really good coach. They have a borderline 5-star freshman coming in, so they're going to be no pushover. You have to do something to stick out, whether that's, like Mike mentioned, play the signature style of defense that Steve Pikiell has built up in the late 2010s, early 2020s. Is it going to be a lot of transition? We mentioned Lino Mark is a really fast point guard. Jamichael Davis has a good amount of speed at that position as well. Get those big wings out and running off transition. Playing once again, that's going to have to come with playing really good defense. Is it going to be? I don't foresee this happening, but is this going to be a lot of, pace and space? How much space is there on this roster? I'm going to say not a lot, but you have to do something to stick out, to make up for the disadvantage in talent, because again, the Big Ten is stacked this year. You got Illinois with all of their, European tour of guys that they have. And obviously we've seen what Brad Underwood's been able to do. There's a few really well-regarded new coaches, like, Fran McCaffrey's gone, but Ben McCollum, who is a very different coach than Fran McCaffrey, but also just as good of a coach as Fran, who Rutgers also plays later on in the non-conference schedule, but we'll get to that in a little bit. You have to be able to do something. So in the ceiling, I would say they're able to find that niche, that they're able to kind of stick out from other teams, play solid defense, being able to run the floor in transition with 2 of their smaller guards, being able to weave through and put together some good playmaking chops. I think, even if they don't reach the ceiling, I think they're going to win at least one game they're not, quote unquote, not supposed to, against one of those top 8 Big Ten teams. Because I don't know. I feel like, I don't know why, but I feel like they're going to be able to pick off one of those teams now. That also might come with losing one of those games you're not supposed to, whether it's to Minnesota or Penn State or someone like that. But I think the ceiling is kind of like Craig and Mike already mentioned, get to around, 7, maybe 8 Big Ten wins. Try to get to around 500 on the season in general. Make sure you win all those bye games in the non-conference slate. At least compete with Tennessee, maybe beat Notre Dame as well, and then we'll see how that third game, the Players era, shakes itself out. But yeah, I think the ceiling is around, like you mentioned, Mike and Craig both, just around that 500 range. Maybe compete for a berth in the crown. Maybe win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament. because everyone makes it now. I think the ceiling is just kind of like what we saw back in the late 2010s before things really got going and got to the NCAA tournament. And part of that, finding that ceiling, is just finding a style that kind of sets you apart from the rest of the conference. And obviously the floor, like you guys mentioned as well, could be, kind of bottoming out. The offense just isn't there. The defense doesn't take that, classic Steve Pikiell step forward as he's expecting and many are expecting. This has a chance to take a turn for the worse, like I mentioned, especially because the Big Ten is so good. But I mean, obviously with floor and ceiling, they'll probably fall somewhere in the middle of that. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking in terms of floor and ceiling.
There's not really much else to say. You guys already said it. I think 500 is probably the ceiling on the year. 15 wins, 15 or I'm sorry. Yeah, 15 wins and 15 wins, right? No, they play 31 games.
Yeah, because that extra game in the
so I guess 15 and 16. Maybe 16 wins you can argue is the ceiling technically.
32, I guess, would be because players are in Big Ten tournament.
And then the Big Ten tournament. Okay, so 500 is doable. So 16 and 16 maybe. I think that's the ceiling, and that's if everything goes right. I don't think everything's going to go right just based on the lineup, based on the players. There's just way too many question marks. We're hearing in practices they're fouling a bunch. We just talked about Pikiell said it multiple times, and once you get in foul trouble in the Big Ten, you're basically screwed. Once you get in foul trouble with your bad centers both in foul trouble in the Big Ten, you're really screwed. I don't know who's going to score. I really don't know on this team who can score the basketball. It is very questionable, very tough to predict. I guess the only bright side would be is that the European guys, you really don't know what they are, and there's been a lot of hype around them. So maybe they'll be able to shine a bright light on that offensive game. But for the most part, the rest of this team really can't score all that well. Like you guys both, or all three of you said, it would be probably the bottom of the barrel would be for them to finish 18th in the Big Ten. And I think it's actually a very realistic chance that they do. I think a lot of people, if I had to pick a sleeper team in the Big Ten right now, I really think Penn State will be better than the 17th or 18th spot. I think Kaden Mingo is a dog as a 5-star. Freddie DeLeon's returning. They have a very good guard that averages probably 12, 15 points per game this year. They have pieces. They have more pieces than Rutgers, in my opinion. And that's what scares me, is that I don't think Rutgers has any really solid pieces. They have Chris Nwuli, who has a potential. Then you lose me. That's the big issue. I'm just not confident in this team. Are we doing season projections right now, technically, or are we waiting for that, or is this kind of our season prediction?
This can kind of bleed into that if you want to just throw your season prediction out there.
Yeah, I have 13 and 17 on the year. I think they're going to struggle mightily. I think they might end up losing a non-conference game, to be honest with you. Not counting Seton Hall. I think Seton Hall is a loss. But again, the rivalry game, like Craig said, it could go either way, to be honest with you. I think Maine's going to give them some troubles. I think Lehigh's going to give them some troubles. I think Penn might even end up upsetting them because Fran McCaffrey has Rutgers numbers for some reason. And it's not like it's a non-talented Penn team. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a brutal year, I think. And I think there's going to be a long streak, specifically between the Vegas games against Tennessee, Notre Dame, and to be determined, and then Purdue and Michigan and Seton Hall and Penn right after. It could be a long couple of weeks in Piscataway. So I'm sorry to sound negative, but this team just not doing it for me on paper. Maybe they come out and prove me wrong. I hope they do, but I'm just not confident.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think early on the goal, at least early on, is that they want to be kind of those early Steve Pikiell teams, to be that team that the other teams really just don't want to face. Be that if you're not going to score the basketball, at least be basically the grittiest defensive team in the league. And even if you're not going to beat, an Illinois or UCLA or the top echelon teams, be that team that they say, look at the schedule and see Rutgers and go, we're probably going to win, but it's going to be like a lunch pail. They said a lunch pail type of game that they're going to be a freaking pain in the ass that we're going to have to. We might win, but we're really going to have to work for it. So if you can just do that, as we've seen that not every night teams aren't hitting their shots. So if you can just keep that defensive intensity, that once in a while you should be able to find yourself some wins. Again, it might not result in 18, 19, 20 wins and a berth to the NCAA tournament, but it can result in just not just competitive play, but get to maybe that 16 win and get to that ceiling that we kind of think. But I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of hope involved with this team, and I think it was like the Mets owner Steve Cohen said, "Hope is not a strategy."
How about you, Alec? How do you see this team? How do you see the season going for Rutgers?
Yeah, I think obviously you have to clean up with the 5 bye games early on. That's a must. I feel like you can't lose out in Vegas in the Players era. I don't know. I haven't taken a really close look at the bracket yet to see who they could face, but I'm gonna say they probably, I don't know. I feel like between the 3 Players era games and Seton Hall, I'll say they win at least one of those games. And then obviously you have the 2 really tough Big Ten games in December, and then you got to once again clean up with Penn and Delaware State to end the non-conference slate. Like Richie said, that Penn game could be kind of closer than I anticipated. Maine, I think, could keep it competitive at least for a little bit. That's a really well-coached team as well. But I think they'll take care of business in those games. I guess the non-conference didn't have the only landmine in the non-conference slate was Kennesaw State, and that was a weird game because it was on the road. It was right before they went to Vegas. There's none of those really on the schedule, so we'll see how that all shakes out. And then in the conference slate, I predict around like 6 or so wins. Like I said, I actually think they'll probably win a game that they shouldn't, whether it's against someone like, I don't know, Michigan State, who's returning to Jersey Mike's Arena for the first time in a few years, or someone like, I don't know. I feel like they pick off one of those top 8 teams. I just don't know which one. It just feels like one of those Rutgers teams that, like Craig mentioned, nobody wants to go up against. That's kind of the ceiling, what you have to try to do. I'll say, so I guess I'm trying to think of the record prediction, roughly around 14, 15 wins, I think is what I'm predicting at right now. So that's kind of where I think this is going.
Don't quote me on this, but I believe the 16 pod of what Rutgers can face right now, or that Rutgers is in, is Tennessee, Notre Dame, Houston, Syracuse, Kansas. So
yeah, Syracuse, that'd be fun.
Similar to a lot of you guys, I'm just going to give my numbers here. I have Rutgers going 7-4 in the non-con, so that includes the TBD game against whoever they finishes in the same place as them on the opposite side of things. I think, like you guys said, I don't think they lose all of their big non-con games, but I do think they get tripped up by at least one of those shouldn't lose games. We've seen it even with the best teams at Rutgers. They find a way to sometimes start off the season slow and lose to a team that they have no business losing to. And I've got them going 6-14 in the Big Ten regular season schedule. And I have them losing in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. So that gives them a 13-19 record on the year. I don't take any kind of solace in predicting a losing record for this basketball team, but it's more of I'd be pleasantly surprised to see them, exceed expectations this year. But just given the lack of offense that this team seemingly has and the reliance, once again, on so many unproven players, I think it's tough to really project them to do a whole lot better than they did last year when they had 2 lottery picks and went 15-17. So that is where I am at. Any final thoughts you guys have about the 25-26 hoop season before we head out of here?
Not really.
I think it's going to... Oh, go on, Alec. You go.
I was going to say, I think we hashed out a lot, went through all the players and schedule and things like that. I think you have to you can't bottom out in order to keep at least some kind of momentum. Like, it can't be the complete floor like we talked about where you finish 18th in the Big Ten and you get tripped up in a non-conference game or something like that. You can't – if you want to keep any momentum in this program, and I'm not saying that Steve Michael's going to get fired after this year. I don't think he will, no matter what happens really, unless they go like 0-32 or whatever, which I don't foresee happening either. But you have to maintain some kind of momentum. So this is a very pivotal season because, like Kelly Zinn has talked a lot about, they're focusing on getting a lot of money for football transfer portal right now and then moving on to the basketball transfer portal and trying to get that momentum and that funding in. They have a GM now. And once again, how much of an impact is it going to have? I mean, it feels like, with Rob Sullivan, I guess in season, how much of a role do you have as the general manager? Probably a lot of, making sure all the current players have all of their, NIL stuff in order and things like that. But this offseason, I'm not looking past this season, but I think this offseason is going to be like we always talk about like the most pivotal, but for the direction of the long-term direction of the program, I think how this season goes and then the offseason that follows is going to really determine a lot of things, because now that there's more of an NIL infrastructure in place, they can, at least sort of compete with some of the rest of the Big Ten and high major, ranks in the transfer portal and things like that. So yeah, this is going to be a critical, 6 months or so.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I was just gonna say, I think it feels like we say this for both, basketball and football, that I feel like we're realistic that we're not expecting, huge things out of this team, but at the same time, just like enough, it just gets tiresome watching. Like, you just be competitive, like just show that there's progress being made and that there's really light at the end of the tunnel, because as we're seeing now, kind of with the football team, just enough. It grows tiresome just watching. In this time, just watching kind of blowout after blowout, uncompetitiveness after uncompetitiveness. Like, they should be beyond this point now with Greg Schiano in year 6 and Michael basically here for a decade. That we understand that they might not have the talent to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten, but at this point, is it too much to ask to just watch competitive football and basketball on a week in and week out, or basketball case a day in and day out basis, that they're not, we don't expect them to be, even really a good team in the Big Ten for basketball, but can they just be that team that, opposing teams really just don't want to face night after night, and just give us, something to really kind of sink our teeth to and show that even though they might not have, we've seen them do it in the past where they might not necessarily have the best talent in the league, but they found a way to be a competitive team that eventually got to the point where they could make the tournament and get to the point where they could bring in a Dylan Harper and an Ace Bailey. So can this be kind of, I guess, the starting point of building this thing back up to the point where Rutgers, we could start talking more once again about, potential March basketball?
Well said, and I think we'll close on that. Hopefully they exceed our expectations, because there's nothing quite like a packed rack in exciting games in the middle of the winter to get you going. I think it's been a lot of fun when Steve Pikiell's been at his high water mark for the program, and I think given the right support, can he get back there? I think he can, but it's gonna take some old school development if he wants to do it the way that he's shown he has the ability to. But for me, Richie, Alec, and Craig, this has been your season preview edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.